favorite book of the year. Hands down. If any book would be better than this year, it's gonna be Crooked Kingdom. I don't think any other book is topping this year. Nope, not happening. This video is my usual non-spoiler review that I do for most books that I read, but my friend Laura also read this book and we are going to do a fun spoiler-filled discussion, so stay tuned for that. Six of Crows, besides The Hobbit, was my first ever high fantasy book. I have tried reading high fantasy books in the past and have had difficulty getting into them because I find it hard to connect to the worlds because I have no idea what they're talking about most of the time. Anyway, I have a video talking about that. I'll link it below if you like. I decided to give this one a try because it's about a heist and I was like, that's awesome. And it was awesome. It took me about, I'm gonna say, 80 pages to really get into it. I think it took me about maybe 60 pages to kind of stop being frustrated with it, and then another 20 pages to be like, oh my god, this book's getting really good. The thing that took me a while to get into it was the normal stuff, how they were talking about things that don't exist in real life without any explanation, and I didn't know what those things were, so it meant nothing to me, and it just made me frustrated. But once like the main events of the story started to unfold, it started to get really good, and also as the story went on, all the things that I didn't know and were confused about kind of sort of explained themselves, so then it got less frustrating that way as well. So I'm gonna say if you have never read high fantasy for the same reasons that I haven't, you should read it anyway, because I got through it, and all the things that I didn't understand and was frustrated about ended up getting explained, and I ended up really, really enjoying it. Loving it. I loved it. I loved it! So, for those of you who don't know, Six of Crows takes place in the Grisha universe, but you don't have to read the Grisha trilogy in order to understand this book. It just takes place in the same world. I never read the Grisha trilogy because this is my first high fantasy book, and I didn't know what a Grisha was when I started reading this book, but I found out what a Grisha was as some time went on, so I'm not going to tell you what a Grisha is if you haven't read them. It takes place in that magical universe, and there are these 6 criminals who all do criminal things for different reasons, and are all good at different criminal activities, and the 6 of them form a group to break somebody out of prison, but it's like, it's not just a regular prison, it's like the most high security, crazy, you don't want to try and break into there because they'll kill you prison. So it's told in the third person, but at the beginning of every chapter it tells you who that chapter is technically about. So like, for example here, chapter 3 is about Kaz, and as I was reading it at first, like before the first half of the book, I thought, it's not necessary to have the characters' names at the top of the chapter because it's written in the third person, so you don't need the author to tell you who that chapter's about because it's written in the third person, so there's no confusion anyway. But I ended up liking throughout the story that it had that, just because it was like, the way a chapter would end, it would make you be like, what? Oh no! And then you would go to the next chapter and you would see who's telling the story and you'd be like, ooh, we're gonna find out what this person was thinking during this! And it would just make it more exciting. So that was cool. So I did end up really liking that it had the character names at the beginning of the chapters, even though it wasn't necessary. It just made it more fun, in my opinion. One of the characters from the group did not have their own chapters. I'm not going to say who it was, but one of the characters didn't have their own chapters, and I'm wondering why, and I'm interested, and I'm wondering if they're going to have their own chapters in the second book. So that was cool. I hope there was a reason for it. I also absolutely loved their backstories. Even like Kaz, I didn't like Kaz at first. At first he reminded me of Will from The Infernal Devices, who I have only read the first book, but I hated him. I did not like him at all, and he was like a spitting image of Will. He was arrogant and annoying and rude and just blah. I did not like him. As the story went on, he did grow on me, and his backstory was really interesting and really good. And there's just stuff about him that you're just like, oh, Kaz. My favorite character in the book was Matthias. We'll say Matthias. Anyway, he was my favorite character. I liked him from the very start. As soon as he's introduced, oh, I can't wait to do the spoiler discussion with Laura because I just want to say all of the things that spoil things. I loved Matthias. I loved everything about his character. I loved his backstory. I loved the way he talked. I loved everything. I loved it all. Also, the pacing was on point. I thought the pacing was perfect because it wasn't slow, but it wasn't like super fast-paced either. There were parts of it that were fast-paced, but it wasn't like go, 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 go the whole time. It was just like perfect. It's so, and then just the interaction with the characters and their dialogue, the things that they say to each other, and this is all over the place because this book was just everything. It was everything. There were two or three parts that I didn't cry, but I was on the verge of crying, and also closer to the end, I want to say, well, last night I was going to read for 1 hour, and I read for 3 and finished reading it. Also, the last 100 pages or so, I want to say, were like, they were so exciting and so intense, and my heart was pounding, and I was nervous, and I was like, oh my god, what's gonna happen? Are they gonna get through this? And it's just, I can't. I should stop. I can't stop gushing about this book. I loved it so much. Seriously, guys, like, I want to marry it. So good, guys. It was so good. I've probably left things out that I would love to talk about, but that's all I have. Stay tuned for my spoiler discussion with my friend Laura, where things will get heated or not get heated. I don't know. It hasn't been filmed yet, so we'll see.